Welcome in, whiskey freaks, to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your number one attitudinal bourbon destination. I'm John Stark, and I'll be bringing you candid and sometimes irreverent whiskey news, opinions, and reviews on the industry and the products they've been bringing us for hundreds of years. I'm extremely glad to have you back today, and I'm pretty darn excited for this episode. Today we play a game called Guess the Whiskey, and I ask the question, have the big distilleries just completely freaking lost their minds? And lastly, I review Oak and Eden in-bottle finished toasted oak bourbon whiskey. So here's the deal. Now, this part of the episode is going to be about fun, frivolity, and hijinks. I mean, we are going to have loads of fun, and how should we kick off this episode of insanity? Well, of course, we should pour some bourbon. But before you grab a pour, I need you to go to Apple or YouTube or Spotify. You know, the places you go to get better podcasts. I need you to subscribe to the Blind Tasting Podcast. Trust me, it'll get my wife off my back if you just swing over there and do that. That would be so amazing. And please don't forget to follow on Facebook and Instagram. As Elvis would always say, muchas gracias. Yeah, so he never said that. But anyway, so back to whiskey. If you can right now, pour some whiskey into a glass or a Dixie cup or the lid from that thermos you had in your Happy Days lunchbox from grade school, and sit back and relax while I drive the bus. Don't worry, you're in good hands. Disclaimer, for legal purposes, I highly recommend that you do not drink if you're driving, operating heavy equipment, or trying to install a satellite dish on your roof. And I got to ask that question too. Does anybody have those dishes on their roofs anymore? Maybe that's DirecTV still, maybe they still do. I don't know. Sorry, I got distracted. Back to drinking. I'm pouring myself a delightful bourbon from our good friends at Lux Row Distillers. And it's a 12-year double-barreled, 118.4 proof beauty. Now, I got this a couple years back when it first came out at the distillery. Set me back about $170 if I remember correctly. And I was a bit skeptical because, well, you know, $170. And it was the first release, but turns out this is probably one of the finest bourbons I've ever put in my mouth. This for me is like a top 5. So I'm treating myself today. And don't worry, I'll be doing a review at the end of this episode, like I mentioned before, of Oak and Eden. So this pour is just to enjoy while we visit here on the podcast. So I'm drinking from the Blind Tasting Podcast Etched Rocks glass today. I really like the way a rocks glass feels in the hand, so I got me one of these bad boys. I'm going to have just a splash here, a little sip. And remember, drink how you like. Of course, mine is neat. Always. But hey, no judgy here, kids. If I remember correctly, even Pappy Van Winkle drank his with ice and a splash of lemon, so you do you. And I'll do me. Okay. My goodness. That puts me in a great mood. It's sunny outside. It's 95. The sun is up. The moon is down. I'm ready for a little craziness. What you say we play a little game? Wow. I've never heard a podcast and playing games. Well, me neither. So I say, why the hell not? Well, what kind of game are we going to play, you ask? Well, I had so much fun doing my Elijah Craig 18 review. Remember, that was where I shared some reviews with you that were absolutely ridiculous. Today, we're going to play a game called Guess That Whiskey. So, in this game, I read a made-up whiskey review. Or maybe it's not made up. And then you guess which bourbon or whiskey it matches up with the best. That sounds like fun to me, and I don't know any other podcasts out there that have this kind of audience participation. And as always, it's free of charge. They might be real. They might be fake. I'll leave that up to your imagination. So let's get started. But first, I'm going to need some special music for this to set the tone. Remember, this is the wacky, wild part of the episode, so brace yourself, whiskey freaks. Oh yeah, I'm digging that music. Oh yeah, it helps me get into my review reading voice. So here we go. Tasting this bourbon is like being hugged by a Kentucky bear that just rolled in a field of caramel corn and vanilla beans. It's so smooth and sweet, you'll wonder if it's bourbon or a liquid dessert. But then the oak comes in like a stern old man telling you it's time to put away your toys and get back to work. Any guesses? I'll give you 5 seconds. If you said Buffalo Trace, then you, my friend, are a winner. On to the next one. This bourbon is so balanced, it's like a tightrope walker made of oak, caramel, and a hint of spice. You'll start to question how anything can be this smooth, and you might even start speaking in whispers around the bottle so as not to disturb its perfection. I really think the music adds something here, don't you guys? Anyway, that whisper, not to disturb perfection, is Elmer T. Lee. And that's one of my personal favorites. I really don't think there's much out there that compares with Elmer T. It's my opinion. On to the next one. It's like someone melted a caramel apple and then decided to distill it into liquid gold. The sweetness and vanilla notes are so comforting, you'll think you're sipping on a warm hug from your favorite grandma with just enough kick to remind you it's still bourbon. Okay, well, I'm not sure I want to be thinking about my dead grandma while I'm, sipping on my whiskey, but okay. Any guesses? Caramel apple? That would be Maker's Mark. I actually do love that caramel apple description. It makes sense to me. Now, last but not least, and this is my favorite. This bourbon doesn't just walk into a room. It kicks the door down and demands your attention. It's like getting caught in a sweet, spicy tornado that leaves you breathless and wondering how something so powerful can be so damn delicious. Alrighty, with the high proof point of this particular bourbon whiskey and the intensity that it has, I would actually agree with this review mostly. I'm not sure it's a tornado, but if you guessed Stag Jr., ding, 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 you win. Now for me, kids, that was more fun than Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I appreciate you letting me doing that, acting silly. Was it silly? Yes. Was it stupid? Maybe. But sometimes you just got to let your hair down and have some fun while you drink whiskey. But now, I'm afraid I got to turn down the fun music. I'm afraid all the antics and fun, well, they might be over for the day, and I'm going to tell you why. I feel the spirit, or maybe it's that 12-year Lux Row, but I feel the need to be honest. Maybe to reflect and maybe even do some truth-telling. Yeah, that. I swear my goal today was perpetual fun. I promise. But I just can't avoid what's been really bugging me, folks. And honestly, I'm just plain pissed off. Hope you don't mind if I ask you all a question. And that question is, have the big distilleries just completely freaking lost their minds? And yeah, I am. I'm going there. I mean, somebody has to do it. And let's start with Woodford Reserve, owned, of course, by Brown-Forman. They recently released their super duper Kentucky Derby 150 bottle. It's thrice barreled. It's seasoned with staves blessed by Mother Teresa, and it's aged in the basement of the Taj Mahal or some such crap. Anyway, it's going to just set you back a paltry 200 doll hairs. No, kids, it's not going to set you back 200. It's going to set you back 15,000 freaking dollars. But good news. There are 150 amazing magical bottles available. Isn't that swell? So I'm sure you can probably pick up, 2 or 3 of those. Oh, and there's more. They come in a crystal decanter with 24 karat gold infused into the stopper. It comes in a leather carrying case. It opens like a cabinet, and the King of England personally brings it to you and serves it to you. Okay, I may have made that last part up, but Woodford Reserve, you should be ashamed of yourself. And what about our old friends at Buffalo Trace, owned by Sazerac? My, what have these kids been up to lately? Seems to me that just because the Kentucky Bourbon Trail is on fire right now, they think they can conjure up a $7,500 bottle of Weller we're all supposed to say, "Oh, great and powerful Buffalo, thanks for blessing us with your fine whiskey. We are in awe of your power and wisdom." I kind of feel like I should drop to the ground and channel my inner Mike Myers by bowing and yelling, "We're not worthy! We're not worthy!" Sorry, folks. I don't care what some of the whiskey big shots out there saying. You know who I'm talking about. You see them in the whiskey documentaries, on the big award ceremonies. Yeah, I've heard them actually defending Buffalo Trace for charging this kind of cash for a freaking bottle of whiskey. See, butt kissing will get you a nice sample, or maybe even a whole bottle of this stuff. So, that's what these guys do. So, do you know what you can buy with $7,500? As usual, I've done the homework, and you don't have to. For $7,500, you could make 5, 6, maybe even 7 house payments, depending on the size of your house. With $7,500, you could send your kid to community college for an entire year, plus books, plus spending cash, and maybe even some beer money too. And if you wanted to buy a decent whiskey, with $7,500, you could buy 200, count them, 200 bottles of Eagle Rare. The more I think about this, the madder I get. This is outrageous stuff, kids. Maybe you're sitting there going, "Stark, you're just jealous. Quit being a little crybaby." Folks, I have quite the pile of whiskey here. There's no lack of good stuff here in the house. Now, don't tell my wife. It's not jealousy for me. It's disgust. And I don't want to hear it's really old whiskey and it's so good and you just don't understand. No, if you're buying into this BS about Weller Millennium, then God bless you. You're probably in the tank with the rest of them. Let me be clear. I don't blindly go along with anything. You gotta think for yourself. And anybody with an IQ over 80 can figure out this is a slap in the face to the people who've made these guys so successful. And think about it. How many times have we stood in that line, in the rain, in the heat, and counted the snakes, hoping, praying it's Blanton's Day or Eagle Rare Day, or trying to get that bottle of Single Oak Project. And this is the thanks we get? And while we have our thinking caps on, ponder this. The Sazerac company brought in $5 billion last year. I promise you, they could have released this a different way. Maybe at a lower price point or smaller bottles, something, anything, so more folks could enjoy it. This is just insanity, plain and simple. I truly think the man behind the curtain has lost his ever-loving mind, and I haven't even gotten to that old-fashioned copper bourbon. You know that stuff they put out? There, Buffalo Trace, they are mighty proud of that one. I'm sure it's amazing stuff, but that'll set you back several car payments. You want to get a divorce real quick? Pick up one of those. Now let's talk about Traveler. What the actual hell was that? I'll tell you what it was. It was an unholy alliance between Wheatley and Stapleton. And if you haven't listened to my review on Traveler, well, you're missing out. It's eye-opening to say the least. And I ask you to jump on over after this episode and check that out. Look, I've had such a great love and admiration for the good folks at Buffalo Trace for a very long time now, and I really can't complain. I mean, look at all the goodies they've brought us over these many years. Remember, they produced Pappy, Handy, Elmer T, World Champion George T. Stagg, and think about that, George T. Stagg, 2 years in a row now, and rightly so. All that good stuff they bring us, and then they try to pawn this Traveler crap off on us. It's ridiculous. Listen, with all their recent shenanigans, overpriced whiskey and unattainable ultra unicorns, is that a thing? Ultra unicorns? I may have just coined a phrase. Wow, how about that? And that's what Millennium is, right? An ultra unicorn. I just got to say, my patience is growing thin with the fine folks in Frankfurt. Now on to Jim Beam, Beam Suntory. Now they came out with a lineage a while back, just a short time ago actually, a few months. I've had it. It's amazing. It's only $250 at the distillery. It's premium, it's amazing, and it's obtainable. Now, in fairness, Beam has put out certain things. They've got their Distiller's Masterpiece Bourbon. I think that's several hundred, and I've never even seen it. But holy crap, you don't need to run out and get a payday loan on your way to the distillery to get some really good stuff when you're there. Jim Beam, you're okay for now, my friend, but I'll be watching. Well, I don't know about all you whiskey freaks, but I feel tons better now, and I've got just one little sip left of this terrific whiskey from Lux Row. I'm going to finish that up real quick, and then on to my review of Oak and Eden Bourbon Inspire Toasted Oak. So I decided to review this bad boy because Yellowstone is coming back in November. I'm a big fan here, and if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. All the kids on the playground are talking about it, and somehow, and get this, they've written the lead character, Kevin Costner, out of the script. So I guess we're going to see just how good a writer Taylor Sheridan is this season. Forey J. Smith, he was a rodeo star turned TV star. He plays a rough and tumble ranch hand at the Yellowstone Ranch on the Yellowstone TV show. He was out hawking this bourbon last year. I think it was last year if memory serves. And because this is a whiskey company out of Texas, and you got to see this guy. He's a terrific pick as an ambassador for the company. He really fits the part, like I said, if you've ever seen him. Now, the bottle I'm reviewing today was given to me by a buddy for my birthday. So, was it a good birthday gift? And are we still friends? Well, let's find out. So, Oak and Eden shtick. And you know how I feel about marketing BS, but it's something they call in-bottle finishing. And now, this comes directly from their website. They say, at Oak and Eden, we follow traditional distillation and aging to the letter, aging our whiskeys for at least 3 years in American oak barrels. We break tradition in the finishing process, where instead of putting our fully aged whiskey in a second barrel, we place a spire, which is a spiral cut piece of oak, inside the bottle. Now, this wood spire stays inside the bottle forever. It's kind of a gimmick, so naturally I'm skeptical. That's just in my nature. Now, they have several offerings at Oak and Eden. They've got a wheated bourbon finished with a toasted French oak spire. They've got a 4-grain with some sort of a spire. They've got a rye with a spire. And they've got another couple. This one, as I mentioned before, is bourbon whiskey finished with a toasted oak spire inside the bottle. Now, fun fact about Oak and Eden, where did they come up with the name? I found this extremely interesting, so I'm going to explain it to you. They say that the oak in the name pays homage to the precious technique of in-bottle finishing and is representative of the oak spire in every bottle. The Eden in the name represents the perfection of creation. They honor God's nature as the supreme creator. They say something like the perfection of creation as manifested in the Garden of Eden in the book of Genesis. So to me, it's kind of cool. I think the marketing team at Oak and Eden gets an A+ for sure. Now, my bottle is from batch B084, and the bottle number is 0520. Not that that really matters, but it does say that on the bottle. Now, I've got no idea what my buddy paid for the bottle, but I checked the other day. My favorite liquor store here in town has it for $45. $45. Now, where does it come from? I mentioned a little bit about this before. They're out of Texas, but it's really from MGP. Okay. Well, it says Lawrenceburg, Indiana on the back of the bottle, so we know that's MGP. So that's where the distillate was born and raised. But they do bottle it in Bridgeport, Texas, and that's down near Fort Worth, for those of you keeping track at home. It comes in at 90 proof. The age, on their website, it says they are aged for a minimum of 3 years, and I'll take them at their word. Now, the bottle design. I always like to mention the bottle design. This bottle is a really hard one to describe. And maybe if you think about a bottle of barrel bourbon, if you can picture barrel bourbon, grab the neck on it and pull it up about 2 inches. That's kind of what it looks like. That would kind of give you an idea of what it would look like. I got very few words for it other than that. I mean, it looks very cool. It's got that toasted oak spire in it. Which is very cool looking here sitting on my shelf. The mash bill, okay, the mash bill of bourbon Inspire is 60 corn, 36 rye, and 4 malted barley. On to the color. Now, I'm actually impressed already. When I look at the color of this bourbon, it looks much darker than any 3-year-old I've seen in recent history. So that to me is a good sign. Now I call it tawny or like a 1.4 technically on the color scale. It's a perfect mix of yellow, orange, and brown if you were to swirl that together. It's beautiful. And quite frankly, it's just enticing, the whole look of this bottle. I've mentioned it many times before. To me, how a whiskey looks can really tell you about the extent of the flavors you're about to receive. The darker the hue, the deeper the flavor profile. And I know that's not always true, but it is in a lot of cases. So it's worth mentioning, and so I do every time. So I'm going to open the bottle and get a little pour. Now I taste out of your typical Glencairn glass, but not always. And like I've said earlier in the episode, you can drink whiskey out of whatever you want. But for tasting, I do try to use the Glencairn, and I'm grabbing a Glencairn today. So I'm going to nose it. I'm getting your typical notes of vanilla, caramel, maybe maple syrup. No, it's not maple. It's more of a honey. So I'm getting vanilla, caramel, and honey. Really nothing else on the nose. Let me go ahead and take a little sip. Let it roll off the tongue, move it around a bit. Call that whatever you want. So, naturally, I'm getting a lot of toasted oak, which is duh. It's got a toasted oak wood spire in the bottle. So, that makes sense. It's very sweet. That caramel and honey are really coming through. Let me get another little sip. Maybe a faint taste of pecan, maybe just a smidge of leather at the back end. It does drink at its proof point, though. It really drinks exactly like it smells. There are no surprises. Yeah, I'm getting what I'm getting, nothing more. And I'm not going to overthink it and give you a bunch of lofty words. That's not what I do here, as you know. The finish, to me, it's got a slight creaminess to it. Doesn't last very long. There's no spice or burn whatsoever. It's just super easy to drink. Gives you all the typical notes you'd expect. Like I said, there aren't any surprises here. And if you think about it, this is just a 3-year-old whiskey. So I wouldn't be upset if it were at a higher proof point. I think if it came in at like 95 or 96, but that's just me. I'm partial to a higher proof point. I think it would really elevate it to the next level. But that's just me. So what's my verdict? I'll be right back after the money spot to reveal today's verdict. Are you looking to update your bar or man cave with some great photographs or wall art? Head over to famousdocs.etsy.com and pick up some fantastic prohibition, whiskey, and gangster-related photographs and art. And if you purchase 4 or more items, you'll get 20% off your entire order for a limited time. That's famousdocs.etsy.com. famousdocs.etsy.com. Remember, there are 3 options at the Blind Tasting Podcast for the verdict. Are we going to keep it, collect it, or cull it? To keep it means to proudly display it in your liquor cabinet or bar. This stuff is good for a pour anytime, so no need to stock up since it's always available. Collect it. That means grab another bottle or 2 since you find it so darn delicious, or since it just may not be easy to obtain. Our last possible verdict is to cull it. Pass it on to an annoying neighbor, or use it to preserve specimens in your laboratory. In the case of Oak and Eden Bourbon Inspired Toasted Oak, I say, keep it. Heck yeah, it's got terrific flavors. It's a super fun bottle. It'll look super cool on your shelf. This really was a great birthday gift. And so you know we're still friends. At $45, it drinks so easy. And if you know a newbie or even somebody that just loves a lower proof or in the 90 proof range, this would be perfect for them. And I would go out and get you some. Remember, they have several options too. I may be heading to the liquor store to try one of the other ones I mentioned to you. This really was terrific. And it might be fun to try those other ones. Last but not least, folks, let's give a shout out to the farmers, distillery production guys and gals, warehouse workers, bottlers, and truck drivers. They make it happen. So cheers to all of them. Well, that's all I got for today, Whiskey Freaks. Thanks for listening to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your #1 attitudinal bourbon destination.